So lots of restrictions are lifted and people are kind of all excited and rushing out to go and be social. And then there's a lot of us with mental health conditions that pre-existed the pandemic or have arisen because of the pandemic that really do not want to go rushing to be social again. And you know what? That's okay. Hey folks, it's Finn. Welcome back, lovely people, and thank you for tuning in to another video. So today is a mental health topic because I want to talk about the effects of the pandemic on mental health, particularly talking about my own experience, because at the very beginning of the pandemic I made a video about how I was kind of predicting what a negative effect it was going to have on not just those like myself with pre-existing conditions, but on everyone really, because how could something this huge not impact people's mental health? So in today's video, I want to kind of revisit some of the fears I had when the pandemic first started in May 2020 and talk about where I am now as we're all starting to get vaccinated and restrictions are starting to lift. But before we get stuck in, if you are tuning in for the very first time, then a huge welcome. My name is Finn, and here on this channel I create first-hand accounts and practical advice on gender transition, LGBT life, mental health and recovery. So if you like what you see, please do hit that subscribe button, because then you'll be kept up to date with all of the regular Finstalments. So I am somebody who has had chronic anxiety all my life. It's had various diagnosed conditions over the years: generalised anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, avoidant personality disorder. It's got lots of names, but basically what it boils down to is I am anxious every single day of my life, and all that happens is the dial is turned up or turned down depending on what I'm doing. It's like my internal adrenaline is broken, so I'm constantly in a state of hyper-arousal. So my base level is high anxiety anyway, that I'm used to. It's like a background buzz of the electricity pylons you often see. It's that kind of background noise all the time. But then when something happens, even a little mild event or a major event, that of course increases. So my anxiety loved the arrival of the pandemic. When I made that first coronavirus anxiety video back a year ago, I was kind of suddenly aware of how much I was noticing a real effect on my anxiety, and that I couldn't possibly be the only person that was noticing this. And I became rather afraid, not just because of the pandemic, but also what it would mean for my mental health, because I have spent a lot of years avoiding my anxiety through self-harm, drug and alcohol abuse, and that really never got me anywhere, other than more anxious and more depressed. Since I entered recovery in 2010 and I became sober, I have learned to engage with my mental health challenges in a very different way. And one of the key things I've learned to do is to challenge my anxiety, because I realised at a crucial moment that I was either going to spend the rest of my life a prisoner because of my anxiety, or I was going to literally feel the fear and do it anyway. I was sick and tired of wasting my life. And I was always kind of saying things like, you know, when I'm better, I will do this. When I'm better, I will do that. Basically, just putting my life on hold. I came to realise that recovery isn't about necessarily being symptom-free. Of course, it's lovely if we can be, but for some of us, for some reason or another, we can't be symptom-free. So the best we can do is learn to live with the anxiety or the mental health or whatever we have in the best way possible by changing our life around as best we can to accommodate it. And in doing that, my life changed. You know, I learned to sit with the anxiety and trust that it wasn't going to kill me, that I could manage it. And over the last 10 years, I've gone from being pretty much locked indoors to living the life you see me living today. Often people are surprised when I tell them I've still got anxiety. I'm very good at looking like I'm okay, faking it till you make it, but my anxiety is still there. And now the way I keep my anxiety managed is by challenging it. It's like a little puppy every day that I have to make do tricks, and if I don't make it do tricks, it'll forget. And what this means for me is putting myself constantly outside my comfort zone, because whenever I avoid anxiety, it just strengthens anxiety's power to say, see, you can't go out. Told you so. So I make sure all the time to have a balance, of course, and look after myself, but to constantly be pushing myself. So I've learned literally to sidestep my anxiety. If my anxiety says, don't do this, then I do it. And so with the pandemic, my biggest fear was in having to be really careful in public, in having to avoid people, in having to stay indoors. This was very much like old behaviour and not what I wanted. And I really did fear that this would then, without challenging the anxiety, with almost like giving into it, even though it's for a good reason because there was an actual real threat, my anxiety would kind of increase because I wasn't challenging it. So has that happened? So currently in the UK, restrictions are lifting, lots of people are vaccinated, things are looking brighter, and people are going back into the social world. And I am really struggling. And my partner Chris said to me, do you think your anxiety is worse now than it was at the beginning of the pandemic? I have to say yes. There is no doubt I've taken some huge steps backwards. At the moment, I'm back to being incredibly anxious in public to the point that I'm shutting down. So I'm back to my old behaviour where I'm asking Chris to ask for things in public. So I'll say to him, if we go and get a takeaway coffee, if you ask for it, I'll pay for it. I'm struggling to talk to people. I'm struggling to make eye contact when people come near me. My anxiety is rising and I'm getting the extreme urge to leg it. So that's not pleasant. So I guess on the face of it, you could say that my anxiety is worse. But I think it's really important to check ourselves out when we notice these things. And I've had to do a lot of reflection on this because it could be very easy to feel like these last 10 years of progress has taken a real knock backwards in this last year. And I could get very upset about that. But when I stop and look, there's lots of factors that prove that although it does seem worse than it was, it's also not. Bear with me while I explain that. Now, the last time my anxiety was this bad, I was using alcohol to numb it and I was staying indoors. And rather than having a proactive stance towards it, I was letting myself spiral. It's very different now. My anxiety is far higher than it's been in many years, but the way I manage it is so different. It's so much healthier. So in that basis, I don't think I've taken a step backwards at all. If anything, it shows the progress I've made, that I can have this twofold increase in anxiety and yet still keep doing what I've been doing, still challenging it, not using negative coping mechanisms, but employing all of my positive coping mechanisms to deal with it. So not really a step backwards. And another way I've been thinking about this as well, to kind of right size it and to not feel bad about all this, is not only am I acting very differently with the anxiety than I once would in a very positive way, but also it's not black and white, is it? There are many shades of grey. And although on the one hand, my anxiety has got far worse when it comes to social spaces, in many other ways, in this last year during lockdown, my anxiety has actually had huge challenges and I've taken some huge leaps forwards. To explain, I am terrible on the telephone. I cannot stand talking to people on the phone. I panic. And it's the same when it comes to doing Skype, WhatsApp calls, any FaceTime stuff, any phone calls I wouldn't do. It was either email or face-to-face. For some reason, online chats or speaking on the phone really did increase my anxiety. And in lockdown, I was forced to start using Zoom. And in the very beginning, when I realised I would need to find a way to challenge my anxiety, I chose to start facing some of these fears instead. And a very good friend of mine connected with me early on and said, look, I'm looking for somebody to connect every day, just to check in with over Zoom while we work alone during this pandemic. And I've been doing that. And that really helped. I started to become more comfortable with Zoom. And we know the rest of the story. Because of Zoom, I'm now doing far more public speaking because I can do it from home. And I've launched a coaching and mentoring business. And I'm constantly coaching and mentoring clients over Zoom. Now, does that sound like a step backwards? I've even written a book in lockdown, so I can't really say I haven't been challenging myself, can I? So what I'm saying, for myself and for anybody else who's finding themselves in this situation, don't get down on yourself. For a number of reasons. One, it's a global pandemic. Who isn't going to be anxious? Even somebody that didn't have mental health challenges before this pandemic, of course, it causes anxiety. It's understandable. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Give yourself a break. Secondly, it might look that you've taken a backward step, but look at the other stuff you've done whilst this has been going on. Look at the huge issues you've been managing on a day-to-day life in a situation where none of us have been through this before and know how to manage it. So rather than kind of look at it from one lens, as in like, oh, this anxiety or mental health is far worse than it was before the pandemic, take a step back like I've done. Because by taking this step backwards, I can see that my anxiety is high, but presenting very differently because I engage with it differently than I did. So really not a step backwards. And in an area that I used to be hugely anxious, that wouldn't touch virtual meetings and so forth, I have really grown in this area and lessened my anxiety in that area and made a massive leap forward that I wouldn't have made had it not been for this pandemic. There are always positives and upsides if we look for them. So spending some time really reflecting on how my anxiety is now, I've decided to give myself a break because initially I was thinking once this pandemic is settled down and we're all going back out, that's it. I need to get out there. I need to start challenging my anxiety. I need to start doing things. Should. But looking at it now and seeing that actually, although things have got worse in some areas, like life, things have got much better in other areas as well, give myself a break. It's about picking our battles, folks. Always about picking our battles. We can't be brilliant at everything. We can't be constantly trying to improve everything. Sometimes we just have to pick our battles and say, you know what, I'm doing really well. There might be some things I wish I was doing better, but it's okay for now. I am going to start challenging my anxiety. You may have seen me on Instagram yesterday. I'm trying to get back out on my own without Chris, interacting with people. I'm trying to go into cafes and stuff on my own because I do want to start challenging it and get back to where I was. But I'm doing it gently. There is no rush for this. And it's okay to ask for help. I've learned that it doesn't matter if I have to ask Chris to speak for me. It's okay. And I've taken a step further and I've got myself one of those sunflower lanyards because my anxiety makes me act a little bit peculiar at times because I'm anxious. So I can be snappy, I can be quite jumpy. And if somebody sees a sunflower around my neck, then hopefully they'll realise I have a hidden disability with my anxiety and understand, which then helps to calm me as well. So it's balance, it's picking our battles, it's giving ourselves a break because we are in a pandemic still, it's not gone away. So if you, like me, are seeing everybody rush out into the social world to try and interact again, and you're not feeling it, you don't want to be hugged, you don't want to be social, it is absolutely okay. If you've been feeling the same way, then I really hope this was helpful to get a bit of perspective because when we're down on ourselves, it can be so easy to focus on all the things we haven't done, should be doing, etc, etc. Whereas it can be really good just to take a step back, forgive ourselves, understand the situation we're in, and then acknowledge all the things we are doing because that's what counts. Mental health is hard work. It would be the same as everybody went running again and you've got a broken leg. Nobody would expect you to pick up and run, would they? And it's the same with this. For those of us who have really been hit hard with mental health challenges because of this pandemic, we can't run straight away, and that's absolutely fine. You're doing amazing. Take your time. It's going to be all right. Because Finn said. If you want to see more of my mental health videos, then do check out one of my playlists and pop over to my website, finleygames.com, where you'll find even more resources on all of the topics I talk about here. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week for your next video.